Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. With all the draws that are going on in the Shenzhen Masters, I thought it would be a nice change of pace to show you a decisive game. This is a very short game, but it features some nice tactics towards the end, so do watch out for that. This game was played between Hans Bohm, a Dutch international master, and Roman Hernandez, a Cuban grandmaster. It was played in Amsterdam 1979. So Hans had the white pieces in this game and he opens with e4. Hernandez responds with e5. And we have the Spanish game on the board, bishop b5. So here Hernandez goes a6, which is also known as the Morphy defense. And white can either retreat the bishop or take on c6. So in the game, white decided to take on c6. So we have d takes c6 from black, and here it is quite well known that taking on e5 as white is bad because queen d4 with a double attack on the knight and the pawn on e4, and if knight retreats, queen takes e4 check, so white would have to sidestep, which would forfeit his right to castle or block with queen to e2. So if queen e2, then black simply trades. And here black is even better because he has the two bishops. Also, his development is quite free-flowing. Maybe something like this. So this isn't so good for white. So after d takes c6, white decides to castle. And we have bishop g4 from Hernandez, just pinning this knight. So here, white played h3, trying to provoke this bishop, asking the question, is black going to take on f3 or retreat? So with hindsight, maybe white should have played the move d3 here. This is maybe a bit better than h3, which slightly weakens the king, as we would see later on, because here after h3, Hernandez plays the move h5, a very aggressive move. So actually this is perfectly fine for white. But this cannot be taken because then after this knight has to move, well actually best for white is simply to give up the knight with d3. So here with this nice open file, black should be slightly better. So if after h takes g4, if white decides instead of d3, he wants to keep the knight, let's say knight takes e5, then here queen to h4 is very strong. Simply threatening to mate with queen to h1, and there's simply no stopping this idea. If f4 trying to give the king a flight square, then simply g3, taking away the f2 square, and queen to h1 would follow. So here white goes d3, just making room for this bishop to develop, and strengthening e4, a very reasonable move from white. And black goes queen to f6, just piling the pressure on this f3 knight. So now white has to figure out how to bring his pieces into the game. Knight bd2 seems logical, just protecting the knight on f3, preventing black from messing up the structure. But this does have the drawback of blocking the bishop on c1. So understandably, white goes bishop to e3 before going knight b to d2. So allowing black to take on f3, and this is actually the computer's recommended continuation for black. So here the structure would be messed up, but this isn't so bad because at least there's no immediate danger for white. Although bishop d6 could be rather annoying for white, stopping white from going f4. So this is how the computer thinks that black should handle the position. But instead of this, after queen f6, bishop e3, Hernandez goes knight to e7, trying to bring another piece into the attack. But the computer doesn't believe this move. But over the board, this looks very dangerous for white. So we have knight b to d2. So here, black carries on with its plan of knight to g6. Again, the computer thinks that black doesn't have anything here. He should play bishop takes f3. So another interesting possibility is to castle, but well, this seems to make sense, being that black already has something going on the king side, but unfortunately this loses tactically because This king is on c8, so the bishop can be taken by white. And if recaptured, then knight goes to h2. So at the moment, the queen and the knight eyeing g4. So white is simply threatening to take g4 with check. If queen to h4, white is just in time. Queen takes g4 check, and he will trade queens. So castling queenside doesn't work for tactical reasons. So here knight to g6 also actually loses tactically for black. Here white can actually take, which was what he did. And after the recapture, white should play bishop g5. This will allow him to keep the extra piece. If he goes knight to h2, then here black has the advantage after queen to h4, threatening to take on h2 with mate. So you cannot take on g4, queen takes h2 is checkmate. And if knight takes, then queen h1 is mate. So here white would probably have to play something like rook e1 and try to run his king to e2. So not knight to h2 here because this loses, but here bishop g5 would allow white to have the advantage. After queen to e6, knight h2, and the importance of bishop g5 is that now there's no queen to h4 from black. So knight to h2 comes with a double attack on the pawn. The queen and the knight are attacking it. So the most challenging try here for black is to play g3, hoping that if f takes g3, bishop c5 check, king to h1, and black still has some pressure because this bishop is looking on a very nice diagonal and covering the g1 square. So black has some compensation here, but probably not enough. So after g3, best way for white to play this is to go knight g4. And white has everything under control. Next move is going to be bishop to e3, controlling this important diagonal. And white is slowly consolidating. So after h takes g5, bishop g5 should be played by white. But here he makes a very big blunder, knight to g5. So here knight to f4 from Hernandez, just cutting the coordination of this bishop. Now threatening to take the knight. So here white was thinking that he can play queen takes g4, but this doesn't work. I will go into it shortly, but let's just see what happens if bishop takes f4. So if bishop takes, queen takes f4, and this knight is actually trapped. Black is also threatening mate on h2, so white has to play knight to h3. And here after g3, well, black is up a pawn with quite a nice initiative, and he is soon going to castle queenside. So after knight to f4, well, Hans thought that queen takes g4 would work for him, because this protects the knight, and white is hoping to play bishop takes f4, and then bring the knight to h3, blocking this dangerous h-file, and all should be well for white. But this move, queen takes g4, actually loses the game for white, because black has a very nice tactical resource here. So for those of you that want to guess the move, I'll give you a few seconds to pause the video to think. So are you ready? Here the move that black played is queen takes g5, and white actually resigned this position. Well, if the queen is taken, then you see the importance of the knight on f4. Now the e2 square is no longer guarded by the queen, so knight to e2 is actually checkmate. The rook also does a good job of controlling this open file. So what happens after queen to f3? So this seems to keep control of the g2 square, but here again black has a very nice move. Queen takes g2 check. So that has to be taken. And here knight to e2 is again a smothered mate. This rook again does a very good job of controlling this h1 and h2 square from the king. So other possible defensive tries after queen takes g5 is f3, just protecting this queen. But here black also wins with a very nice tactical shot, knight to h3 check. So there are a few ways that white can play this. So if he plays, well, if queen takes, then simply queen takes e3, and after king h1, well, black is going to take here, followed by taking on d2. So rook f2 also can be tried by white, but here after taking the queen, and bishop c5 is very unpleasant, simply threatening to take. Also, this knight is hanging. So after, well, let's say here pawn takes h3. So then black would take on e3, and then he can take on d2, and then black is simply up a full piece in this position, and white's king is very exposed. This is good for black. So after knight to h3 check, well, white can also try king to h2 and king to h1. Let's see what happens if he goes king to h2. Here knight to g1 check. It's a very nice move from black. So if that's taken, queen takes e3 check. Only move is rook to f2, then bishop c5, piling up on the pinned piece. If queen to g3, don't make the mistake of taking on d2, because white would take on e5 with check, followed by taking the bishop. Oops. So here, the best move is to play rook to h5, just protecting that pawn, also with ideas of rook coming to g5, and black also threatens to take on d2. This should be a great position for black. So let's see what happens. Oops. Let me just find that variation. Alright, after knight to h3 check. So what happens if king to h1? Here knight to f2 check. So after king to g1, black can play knight takes g4, allowing white to take the queen on g5. But here the bishop is no longer controlling this diagonal. So black can play bishop c5 check. White would play rook to f2, and then here knight takes f2 is crushing, simply threatening to play rook to h1, and white is just completely lost here. So a very nice miniature from Hernandez. That is all for this video. I hope you enjoyed the game. Thanks for watching and have a great day.